Hello and welcome to another edition of Hughes of the World. Today we are travelling to our third South American country. We've already been to Argentina, we've been to Bolivia. Today we are going to Brazil, the biggest country in Latin America. In fact, the fifth biggest country by area in the world. And it used to be the fifth biggest by population as well. But now it's not, because that's Pakistan. Anyway, so now it's the sixth, but that's okay. Hello to you all. I've got Lee Corn on the line. Hi, Lee. How you doing, mate? I've got a Pineapple Boy saying his granddad, my German granddad, lived in Brazil from 1939 to 45. Didn't fancy fighting on the side of the Nazis. Good on him. I've got Conservative and Unionist News saying, down with this type of thing. Oh, you naughty people at the Conservative and Unionist News television station. Think about it. What else have we got? What thing? Hello, everyone. Hello. My Chobai says, my German granddad went to live in Brazil in 1945. He didn't fancy being hanged. It's a Nazi joke. I did not see that coming. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Got Context saying, hello everyone, and my voice going very strange. I've got Jeremy Goff saying, tall and tan and young and lovely, the girl from Ipanema goes walking, and when she passes, each one she passes goes, ah. Evening. Yes, Ipanema, the girl from Ipanema. Ipanema is one of the beaches in Rio de Janeiro, which means January River. Glasses or contacts? Contacts. My glasses are in the shop. They are literally in the garage getting new lenses placed in them, which takes 2 weeks apparently. That's longer than it took to fix the car after having a prank. Do you know what I mean? It's like 2 weeks to put glasses into, like glass into glasses. Seriously? Vision Express, you used to do that in an hour. Anyway, look, we're getting ridiculously sidetracked. Cricket is saying, where are your glasses? Yeah, I just told you, they're in the shop. They need new lenses because the lenses that are on them, the coatings come off, which always happens on the thin lenses that you get because they have to have a special polymer coating on them to make sure if they crack, they don't like smash into your eyeballs and make you go blind forever. So they have to have this sort of plastic coating on the outside. It's not plastic, it's polymer, whatever. But basically that lifts off after 2 years. What's it called? Something like redundancy, isn't it? Like scheduled redundancy. Something like that. Planned obsolescence. There you go. That's a good term for you. Planned obsolescence means that things are set up so they actually break after a while and you have to get new ones. Anyway, Spexgate, indeed. I went to Barnard Castle to test them today. They were good. When you said they were in the garage, I thought you meant you left them there by accident when filling up. No, it was a metaphor, Lee, my friend. Okay, let's crack on. Brazil is one of my favorite countries in the world. Again, I've just got a real love affair for Latin America and Southeast Asia. If I'm talking about a country in Latin America or Southeast Asia, chances are I'm going to have a rosy picture of it, depending on... There's a few countries that are a bit problematic, but generally speaking, Brazil is freaking awesome. Although its president is not particularly awesome at the moment. So we'll be digging into that very soon. The capital, not Rio de Janeiro, it's Brasilia, which was designed by the Brazilian architect Oscar Niemeyer in the 1950s. It was opened in the 1960s, and it's a big concrete wasteland in the middle of the jungle, which cost a metric F-ton of money to create, and the Brazilian people were still paying off the cost of building their castle in the middle of a swamp. Well, after years, I don't think they've even paid it off now, to be honest with you. I know they were paying for it throughout the 70s and 80s, and it really had a huge, devastating effect on the economy there. So the moral of the story is, don't move your capital unless you really have to. Don't move your capital unless you've got lots of capital. See what I did there? This is why you tune into this. I know it is. Brazil, land of beautiful women. That is very true. And also, the beautiful women. Why? Take a step back and think, why are the women in this country more beautiful, seemingly, than in other countries? One of the reasons might be plastic surgery, but one of the other reasons might be because it is a real melting pot of different ethnicities from all over the world. And when people get it on from different parts of the world, they seem to produce kids who are just generally, offspring that are generally better looking than the average person whose parents never left the village, to put it mildly. Yes, Brazil samba. Yes. It's the third capital. It's the third city to be their capital. That's very true, Chubai. Very Brazilian name, not German. Yes, indeed. Pineapple Boy, what do Antarctica, Brahma, and Devasa have in common? I have no idea. I'll go as far as to say I don't actually know where Brahma and Devasa are. Sorry, is that really bad of me? Are they in Brazil? Because you're making me look like a chump here. I know Antarctica's not in Brazil. I could be pretty certain of that. But Brazil's a bloody big place. So, yes. Beer. Yes, that's what they've all got in common. Beer. The population of... start again. The population of Brazil is now 211 million people. And that makes it the 6th biggest country in the world in terms of population after China, India, USA, Indonesia, and Pakistan. Indonesia, everyone goes, oh, Indonesia. Yes, Indonesia. Over 250 million people live in Indonesia. The currency is called the real. It's written real, like Real Madrid. Not that fake Madrid. Not like fake Donald Trump. I love the fact that Donald Trump, throughout his whole Twitter career before he was kicked off it, had the Twitter handle Real Donald Trump. It's like having your name as down as Donald 4929897. It's like, could you not get the real one? You know, you're a multi-millionaire. I'm sure you could have paid someone off for it. No. Anyway, the language is Portuguese, and the flag is here. Here's the flag. It's not one of my favourite flags. Gotta say, I don't really like the green and the yellow. It looks like a lizard's eye, the eye of a lizard. I also don't like the placement of the stars on the flag as well. I think it's a bit busy. But also, the placement of the stars, I should explain. It looks like a bit like a cricket ball, and it's got Ordem and Progresso, Order and Progress, written across it. But that's actually a map. That's a map of Brazil. And in the map of Brazil, they've got constellations that can be seen in the Southern Hemisphere representing the different states. There's 27 states representing the different 27 states of Brazil. So actually, if you look very closely in the middle of the flag there, you can actually see the Southern Cross, which is one of the reasons I don't like the Southern Cross, because it's used on the flags of Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Brazil, obviously, and it's not very unique. It's not very unique to a country. It's like, oh, we're in the Southern Hemisphere. Quick, slap a Southern Cross on the flag, and then we'll know we're in the Southern Hemisphere. Yeah, I think lazy flag making, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. Anyway, but the reason why it's this kind of strange thing where you've got this diamond shape, I don't think there's any other countries in the world that have a diamond in the middle of their flag. Prove me wrong, please do. I'm sure I'm missing something. It was based on the original royal flag, the imperial flag of Brazil, going back to the 1820s. So and it was designed in the 50s, I think. But one of my favourite countries, not necessarily one of my favourite flags, but there you go. Fun with flags. I see the cross of the south, I think. Gwyneth Benedict says, 2 weeks to get new lenses, and Poots from the DUP resigned, believes God can make two universes in that time. Yes, so Poots, Edwin Poots, sounds like a character. Sounds like a character from the Dickens novels, doesn't he? Old Edwin Poots, always getting into mischief. Oh, he's such an idiot. Oh, he's fallen down a manhole again. He's cracked his face open. Oh, well, never mind. Edwin Poots. Anyway, he's pissed off because he doesn't want to be leader of the DUP anymore, because this is a poison chalice. Because as Leo Varadkar spoke about literally, I think yesterday or the day before, the reunification of Ireland is coming, okay? It used to be years away, possibly decades away. Now it's getting closer every day. St. Vincent and the Grenadines has 3 diamonds in the flag. It does have 3 diamonds. You're very right. We should make a V for Vincent, I guess. You're right, but it doesn't have like a big diamond like this. I'm trying to think of another flag that has a big one-off sort of rhombus in the middle. If you know, let me know in the chat. Okay, so the people of Brazil are, like I said, it's a very mixed bunch of people, to put it mildly. The people who regard themselves as white are around 48% of the population. The people who regard themselves as black are 7.6% of the population, and the people who regard themselves as multiracial or pardo is 43% of the population. However, there's a lot of people who in Brazil in recent years who are now regarding themselves as black rather than pardo, because they're having a chance to reclaim their ethnicity. Because for a long time, people said, "Oh, there's no different races. Everyone's Brazilian. Everyone's Brazilian." It's going so far as the current plank of wood, who is now the president of Brazil, who has overseen 500,000 deaths from COVID-19. Jag. In Liverpool, if something's a bit rubbish, we say it's a bit jag. And his name is Jar. I mean, come on. It's nearly there, isn't it? Jair Bolsonaro, he is... I'll go on about him later, but he's proper scumbag. He said, if you talk about racism, you make people racist. Which is kind of stuff that you hear from dickheads like Lawrence Fox. I've got to be careful with the swearing, by the way, because I've been told that children watch this sometimes. So I don't know if I can get away with saying dickheads. I just did, but if I can't, let me know in the comments. Angeloid the King. Hello. And we've got Arkansas has a big rhombus flag. Oh, well, at least it don't have the southern, what's it called? The Confederate flag. In the flag, like the flag of Mississippi does. Wow. Yes, Wallace Poots. Right, so, also worth mentioning that over 1% of the population see themselves as East Asian, and that leaves just 0.4% of the population who regard themselves as Amerindians or native indigenous people of the land. That's a tiny, tiny percentage. It is a big country, but that's still a tiny percentage. So, fun facts about Brazil. Well, first of all, as you know, I'm sure you know this because everyone knows this, it's one of the most biodiverse countries in the world. They have about 4 million different plant and animal species living in Brazil, obviously, because it's home to 60% of the Amazon rainforest, which is being deforested at an alarming rate, and we'll talk about that later. There are more than 4,000. I had to check this because I didn't believe it when I read it. I went, nah, I can't be right. There's more than 4,000 airports in Brazil. That's seriously, it's a big country. I know, but seriously, come on. But that's because a lot of the country was, for a long time, inaccessible by roads. A lot of it still is. Brazil has one of the largest economies in the world. It's widely perceived to be the 9th biggest economy in the world by GDP, although the IMF figures for 2021 put it down to 13th. So watch this space. Brazil shares a border with every single country in South America, except, and this is a really good quiz question, it often comes up, except Chile and Ecuador. Okay, they're the two you got to remember, Chile and Ecuador. Yeah. Okay, sex change surgeries are free under Brazil's public health system, which is good. We've also got Brazilian prisoners are allowed to reduce their sentence by 4 days for every book they read, which I think is a fantastic rule. I've spoken about this before during a Hughes round, where I've said I think that in prison, if you learn something, if you get a qualification, it should reduce your sentence. And that's what they do in Brazil. It's a really good idea. I like it. The largest population of Catholics in the world can be found in Brazil. And also, the largest population of Japanese people outside of Japan. I'm sure you didn't know that. You might have known that. I don't know. I apologize if you knew that. But I didn't know that before I started researching this today. I was like, what? So yeah, the second biggest population of Japanese people outside, well, no, the first biggest after Japan, which is crazy, but it's true. Also, Brazil's capital, Brasilia, was designed by Oscar Niemeyer. It was designed to look like an aeroplane or a bird, possibly a bird, from above. Rio de Janeiro was once the capital of Portugal, which is, I'm going to talk about this, because there was one time when Brazil became the United Kingdom. This has actually happened. It became the United Kingdom of Portugal and Brazil, and the capital was in Rio. So the capital of a European country, Brazil, Portugal, was moved to Brazil. Keep watching. And it was all Napoleon Bonaparte's fault. Actually, it was partly Napoleon Bonaparte's fault, but it was also the fault of Brazil for just being too awesome, I think. Apparently, Rio de Janeiro was actually named in error. A Portuguese explorer thought it meant the mouth of the river, whereas it meant actually January River. What? Did he not speak Portuguese? I don't really get that. Voting in Brazil is compulsory, like in Australia, although only 43% of adults have a high school degree, so there's a lot of work to do in terms of education in Brazil. It's the only independent South American country to send troops into World War II to go and fight. It's home to the world's best beach, according to TripAdvisor. It's also got the title for the world's largest exporter of coffee, which is amazing because the coffee comes from all over the place, like Java and in Indonesia. You've got Kenko coming from Kenya. You've got Costa Coffee coming from Costa Rica. There's lots of places that export coffee, but Brazil is the biggest. And obviously, it's a big country. The national dish is, I'm going to say this wrong now, aren't I? Fallujah. Fallujah? Shit, no, that's isn't that in Iraq? Feijoada, which is a black bean stew with dried, salted, and smoked meat. Brazil was the first country to accept women in the armed forces. The national drink is known as caipirinha. I'm probably saying that wrong as well. Apparently, it's delicious. And I think that the hat at the end of the name is pronounced differently to what I'm saying there. I think it's pronounced as a ja or something. The most popular Brazilian name is Silva, as in Silva. And it's a plastic surgery capital of the world after the USA, with over 2.2 million procedures in 2018, mostly boob jobs. You're welcome. Okay, so we're going to have a little bit of a chat with the chat, and then I'm going to head on into the map. Okay, so we're going into the map bit. All right, so I'll do the map men tune. Even Urban Animations couldn't make a movie from that story, Glasgow Kiss. What story? Arkansas, pronounced. Yes, Arkansas. They wouldn't play the Copa America in Argentina because of COVID, yet Brazil stepped in to host it. 500,000 people dead. Hi, Alex. Sounds like a medical complaint. What? Someone's got a medical complaint? What's going on? Bolsonaro is true. Many celebrities like... how do I say that? How do I say the X's in Portuguese? Is it Zuza? Or is it Cuca? Or is it Thutha? I don't know. Or Pele from Brazil asking for the resignation of Bolsonaro for lack of responsibility of managing COVID. Yeah, he is. He's going down. I hope. That'll be another bright spot on the horizon for the world. Christ the Redeemer looks like Jimmy Hill, according to Carl Pinkelton. I think Carl Pinkerton. He went to. Didn't he say he looked like a pylon? Like he said, he looks like an electricity pylon. David says sex change is free, but there are many cases of homophobia. There are, but there's many cases of, look, I don't know. I feel like it's getting better. I know there are cases of homophobia and racism, outright racism. There's very much a need for the Black Lives Matter protests that were happening last year in Brazil and around the world. They've got some way to go, but at the same time, you're talking about the country that has one of the biggest Mardi Gras celebrations in the world, and you can't get much more gayer than Mardi Gras. It's the gayest festival of all time. It's even gayer than Pride. Chobai says, I travelled from Manius to Bella Vista by bus. That wasn't a road as we know it. Took a boat out to Belém, easier. Manius is in the Amazonias state, I think, or Amazonia. And Bella Vista is right in the very, that's in the middle of nowhere, isn't it? That would be a bit of a difficult ride. Bella Vista, whereabouts is Bella Vista? I've been to Boa Vista in the very northwest of the country, up by the border with Venezuela. I'm not too sure where Bella Vista is. Brazilian also have an expression which is solta de fraga, which means get wild, sing, be happy. Yes. Pineapple Boy says third biggest producer of pineapples. Yay! I've produced pineapples on my island. Did I tell you about this? I probably do every time I see your name. 9 words from Drew says map men, men. I'm probably going to get sued now for copyright. One of the problems that Brazil faces has been a massive, relatively recent influx of American-inspired Protestant evangelicals. It paid off for Bolsonaro. Yeah, but I think Bolsonaro's, he's out there. It's pronounced Shusha. Okay, cool. Thank you very much. I think from now on, if you want me to say a foreign word, you just got to spell it alphabetically because I'm an idiot. I'm really bad with languages, and I just it's hard to keep up. It's hard to keep up because a J in Spanish is pronounced like a H, so it's Jose, yeah, but it's J. But if they're from Portugal, like Jose Mourinho, it's not Jose, it's Jose, so it's Jose Mourinho. It's just very confusing. Okay, so Adam K's very Mapman as well. Okay, right. Here we go. We're gonna go into the map, into the world of the world. This is the world. Woo! There we go. That's our planet. I didn't plan for it, but it's our planet. That's Africa there, in case you're lost. And over here we have South America. Actually, if you talk to people from South America, they generally think that this is all one continent, all North America and all South America is one continent. But generally speaking, we split it up to North America up here, down to Panama, and then we have the Darien Gap, which separates, well, Central America, but this is sort of the Midlands, isn't it? This is the Birmingham area of the Americas. But Mexico is usually regarded as North America. These countries here, the 7 countries in Central America, regarded as Central America. And then obviously this is South America here with the Caribbean above it. So if I zoom in a little bit to Brazil, we can see some fun stuff in Brazil. So if you look very closely, you can see it's actually separated out into different states. It's quite hard to read because, I don't know, Google Maps hates me. So there's the state of Sao Paulo down there. You got the state of Rio de Janeiro, so that's Rio down here. We've also got Sao Paulo down here. This area down here, the Rio Grande do Sul. There's a lot of Germans live there. A lot of Germans, surprising number of Germans, and also people from other countries like Italy and Japan live in that area there. It's quite a white area. The more north you go, you get areas that are more dominated by people of different colour. And then you have, over here is obviously the Brazilian rainforest. And there's Manaus over there, which we just mentioned, which is right slap bang in the middle of the rainforest, which I'm going to show you now. If we can go in. This is the Amazon rainforest here, and this is the Amazon River. Oh, I need to get rid of these labels, don't I? How do I get rid of the labels? Get rid of the labels. No. I'll hang on a sec. Hang on a sec. Let's sort this out. I don't know why it's not letting me turn off the labels because it's kind of annoying me. No, it's moved to things. Layers have moved. Okay, great. So there's the thing there. Okay, so you got terrain, traffic, more. All right, I want terrain. I don't want terrain. I just want satellite. Okay, cool. Terrain. No, that's not working. Okay, forget this. Sorry, everyone. You're just going to have to look at it. There you go. There's the Amazon. That's the Amazon River. There you go. The second longest river in the world after the Nile. And it goes all the way over here into Peru. It goes a long bloody way. And all around it is the Amazon rainforest, the most important rainforest in the world. And unfortunately, it is getting deforested at an absolutely terrifying rate of several million acres a year. Meanwhile, you can actually see the state names now, which is good. You can see it easy on here. State of Espiritu Santo, which means the Holy Ghost. That's quite cool. Is over there. And then you've got these beautiful beaches all along here, which are well worth checking out. And we can also have a look at some of the borders. This over here, this at the top here, this all used to be Dutch. This used to be Dutch, and then that got taken by Brazil. The state of Acre over here, this area here used to be Bolivia, and they took that. They had a bit of argy-bargy with Paraguay, which I'll talk about a bit later on. Also Uruguay. I think they had a pop for Uruguay at some point, but Uruguay is a Spanish-speaking colony, so they were like, nah, not interested. We're going to stay Spanish. And this is the area down here that I was just talking about. Okay, so you know what it is. You know what it looks like. Amazon rainforest. One thing I would like to just point out while we're looking at the earth is that in a moment I'm going to be talking about why Brazil is Portuguese, whereas the rest of Latin America is Spanish, and why Africa had quite a few Portuguese colonies. It had Cape Verde, one of my favorite places on earth, over here. It also had Guinea-Bissau, also had Angola down here, and Mozambique. And there's a reason for this, because in 1494 there was a treaty called the Treaty of what was it? Tosadias or something. I should remember this off the top of my head without having to look it up. The Treaty of Tordesillas, which decided to split the claims in the New World between the Spanish could take everything over here and the Portuguese could take everything over here. But if I flatten the map, how do I flatten the map? This is no good. No, that's not done what I wanted it to. They've moved everything. Why do you have to move things, Google Maps? You confuse me. Anyway, so basically the line was drawn from just off the coast of Africa here, where you have Cape Verde Island. So that's about here. And the area of the New World that had been discovered by Columbus, which is along here, the Bahamas, and down into the St. Vincent and the Grenadines and stuff. So they drew they drew the line here. They drew the line here, and it was 370 leagues west of the Cape Verde Islands. And if you notice, if you draw a straight line down, there's this land here. They weren't expecting that. They thought this was all going to be Spanish, but they didn't even know this land was here. So this land ended up being Portuguese. So that's why that happened. Anyway, so enough of this. I'm going to come back to you and read some of your lovely comments. Blimey, it's round. It is round. How do you manage with languages when you say you're bad with them? I don't know. I'm very good at mime. I'm very good at non-verbal communication. Darian De Star says, in the US, there's been a dramatic increase of people who describe themselves as Christians, so the evangelicals are doing as much ministry work as possible to protect their grift. Makes sense. Adam says, if Central America is the Birmingham of the Americas, does that make Ginger Island Coventry? Yes. It's the Venice. It's the Venice of the North. David Juardo says, I can teach you some Spanish, French, Portuguese. Please do. I'm terrible at them all. They stole some land off Peru. They did indeed. 9 worlds from Drew says, I have long assumed that Mexico can be considered part of Central America. I feel deeply ashamed of myself to learn that it isn't. Well, it can be. If you buy the Central America Lonely Planet, it does include part of Mexico. It includes the Yucatan Peninsula. But that's it, because they're like, well, that's sort of... I mean, come on, it's all man-made, isn't it? It's all like where you draw the line, and it's usually a bit vague. But generally speaking, look, Central America isn't a continent, is it? So if you're going to split it into two, North America's really got to go all the way down to the Darien Gap. Or maybe the Panama Canal. Maybe the Panama Canal is what separates it, and the Suez Canal is what separates Africa from Asia. Who knows? Either way, it's all just made up. It's all just made up. Want to learn swear words in Portuguese to insult Priti Patel. Francisco de Silva says, thanks for the beautiful comments about Brazil, but unfortunately since 1985, Brazil is going downhill. The nice Brazilians have left long time ago, myself included. We'll talk about that. I mean, it's really sad. It's really sad what's happened in recent years in Brazil. And but it's sad what's happened in the UK and the US and Turkey and the Philippines and Russia, lots of places where these dickheads have got into power. Well, I suppose Putin's not really a dickhead, but the rest of them are. But yeah, Brazil seems, at one hand, it's absolutely blessed with some of the loveliest people and the most amazing landscapes and incredible vistas that you could possibly go and hope to see in your life. And on the other hand, it's just a bit sad that it seems to have a bit of a run of bad luck, I guess. Anyway, so I'm gonna move on. I think if you plan a route from Google at the southernmost tip of Brazil to the northernmost tip of Brazil, the route is 500 kilometers longer than that from Gibraltar to Noordkap. Wow, that's a bloody long way. Right, so let's talk history. Right, there's a bit of argy-bargy about this, a bit of argument, but generally it's believed that the inhabitants of the Americas arrived from Siberia in waves between 12,000 and 8,000 BC, crossing over what's now the submerged Bering Strait. The oldest traces of human life in the Amazon region of a series of rock paintings estimated to be 12,000 years old near the Monte Alegre. And by the time the Portuguese arrived, there was probably between at least 2 to maybe 4 million people living in what's now Brazil. As I was explaining about the Treaty of Tordesillas. In 1494, the Treaty of in 1494, the Treaty of Tordesillas was agreed between Portugal and Spain. All the land over to the west of 370 leagues, which is about 1,277 miles, was given over to Spain, and anything to the east was given over to Portugal. So Portugal was looking at Africa, it was looking at Asia, whereas Spain set its sights on the New World. That was only 2 years after Columbus had sailed to the New World, and only 1 year since he got back, because he got back in 1493. And what this treaty did was essentially give what's now Brazil, or the beginning of Brazil, to the Portuguese. But they didn't know it at the time, because they didn't know that what is now called Brazil was there. They didn't even find it till 1500. In 1500, a Portuguese explorer called Pedro Cabral, he made landfall around present-day Puerto Seguro, and he claimed possession of the land, believing it first to be an island, and he claimed it for the Portuguese crown because he got his sextant out, or whatever they had back then, octant, whatever, and he measured it. And he said, "Oh, actually, this is by the treaty. This is our land. This is our island." It wasn't an island; it was a huge chunk of a continent, but he didn't know that. So they put a flag down. He baptized the area the Terra de Veracruz, which means the land of the true cross, not the false cross, the true cross, the real Donald Trump. And then he slung his hook, pissed off, and basically with all the lucrative diamonds and ivory and gold to be plundered in Asia and Africa, this place wasn't particularly high on their list for places to hang out. And it wasn't, in fact, till 31 years later that the first Portuguese settlers arrived in Brazil. At the time, there were 3 main peoples living on the coast. There was the Guarani, there was the Tupi, and the Tapuia. And they were wiped out, pretty much wiped out, pretty much completely and utterly eradicated by a war on 4th front, which was waged by the Portuguese. It was a cultural war as well as a physical, territorial, and a biological war as well. Many indigenous people fell victim to the I don't know if I'm saying this, bandeirantes, who are a group of roaming adventurers, which is not a great word to use, I don't think, for these people, who spent the 17th and 18th centuries exploring Brazil's interior, pillaging Indio settlements as they went. Those who escaped such a fate were struck down by illnesses shipped in from Europe, such as smallpox, for which they had no natural resistance. Others were worked to death on sugar plantations. With so many dead, Portugal turned its attention to getting its workforce, its people working from Africa. And this began one of the most shameful chapters of human history. the transatlantic slave trade. And these people were torn from their tribes in Congo, Angola, Mozambique, as well as Guinea, Sudan even. And by the time slavery was abolished in 1888, around 4 million Africans had been shipped to Brazil. Nearly 40% of the total that came to the New World went to Brazil. 40%. Just to put things into perspective here, the West Indies or the Caribbean, I've often spoken about how the Caribbean had more slaves shipped to the Caribbean than were shipped to America. I've never really made it clear just how many more slaves there were. It was 10 times the amount. So of all the slaves that were shipped over from Africa to the New World, 40% went to Brazil. 50% went to the Caribbean. 5% went to the USA. And that is what we should be learning about in schools when we talk about the slave trade. We seem to think, oh, those are the Americans and they had the Civil War and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, they had slavery, but nowhere near on the scale as the British or the Portuguese or the Spanish for that matter. Anyway, moving swiftly on. One thing that was unusual about Brazil from the get-go was the fact that there were a lot of mixed relationships. I'm going to call them relationships because I'm being nice. I don't want to say what a lot of them were, which is rape. But the way that couples got together, one way or the other, wasn't as frowned upon as it was in other societies at the time. This is why so many people in Brazil today regard themselves as pardo, as mixed race. That was kind of unusual in the world at that time, that it wasn't frowned upon quite as much. It was still frowned upon. Come on. Yes, these bandits, these bandeirantes, the fortune hunters is a better name for them. By the mid-17th century, they had journeyed as far as the peaks of the Peruvian Andes. So that's where it started off with these little places along the coast, and then they spread into the interior, and that's why Brazil, which according to the 1494 treaty, it should be, just the coast basically, but they actually spread in to along the Amazon, spreading, torturing, enslaving, murdering. It was a bit of a grim time for the people, the indigenous people of the Amazon. In 1750, after 4 years of negotiations with the Spanish, their conquests were secured, and the Treaty of Madrid handed more than 6 million square kilometers to the Portuguese and put Brazil's western borders more or less where they are today, the 1750s. So that happened. In the meantime, it's thought that the bandeirantes may have killed in excess of 500,000 indios, indigenous people. 500,000 people. But they found some gold. Yay. I guess that makes up for the human life. When I was traveling in the Pacific, I went to an island called Yap in the Federated States of Micronesia. And on the island of Yap, they have these giant coins. That's like something from Super Mario Brothers, like these coins that are the size of you. They're a bit too big to fit in your pocket. And they're made of stone, and they've got a hole in the middle. And these coins are made from a stone that isn't found on the island of Yap. In fact, it's only found on islands in Palau and Papua New Guinea. So to get these coins to the island, they had to go out on a dugout canoe, little outrigger thing, just paddling with a little sail, Moana, the boats from Moana, right? Okay, so they had to go 1,000 miles over the ocean, paddling boat. They had to get there. They had to fight the warlike tribes wherever they met. They had to quarry the goddamn massive coin, and then they put a log through the middle of it, and then they paddled it all the way back to Yap. And the worth of the coin wasn't how big it was, wasn't how shiny it was. They weren't particularly shiny. It's just made of stone. It was how many people died in order to get the stone back, the stone coin back to the island of Yap. And the more people who died, the more the coin was worth. And you think, bloody hell, that's pretty bad. and then we think, oh, hang on, diamonds, gold, oil. Yeah, we're not so different, you and I, especially in Welsh. Anyway, so back into the comments for a moment before I hit the like button. Yes, and also if you want to send a super chat, you can do that, because obviously, you know, I'm busking here. I'm giving history lessons, geopolitical lessons for I got my hat out, got my hat on. You know, cap in hand. This is me singing and dancing. I can't sing, can't dance, barely play the piano. Yeah, come on. So if you want to chip in to help me out, that would be great. Private education. Okay, Jeremy, I can't sleep due to the heat. Sounds ideal. What? Brazilian TV in the 80s was very artificial. Only blonde women in Brazil. Anything out of blonde women with blue eyes on TV was depressing on that period. Indeed. Andy, I have a surprise for Glasgow Kiss. Ooh. It's so interesting. I'm forgetting to watch the chat. Sorry, I'm forgetting to look. That's not because I'm interesting. It's just loads to get through. We've got 10 minutes to 11, and I am not even halfway through. I'm not even halfway through this show. I've also got footage of me in Brazil when Brazil won the World Cup in 2002, which you're going to want to watch. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for that. But yeah, let's get on with the history. Oh, a super chat has just dropped. Cricket, thank you very much. $10 from Cricket. You are a legend. Thank you, Cricket. You're absolutely brilliant. Let's sort out the Year Odyssey sometime. The Year Odyssey 2. We're going to do it properly this time. And it's only going to take us 18 days. And we're not going to go to countries that we didn't need to go to. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Where was I? They found gold, yeah. There was a major shift in... This gold rush caused a major shift in Brazil's population from the northeast to the southeast. Oh, I've got another super chat. Sorry, I've got to stop. Darian to start, £3, just a down payment. You'll get more later. Thank you very much, Darian. You're a legend. Thank you. All right, okay. Back to the show. Where was I? Yes, gold discovered. Basically, there was a major shift in the Brazilian population from the northeast to the southeast. And when gold was discovered, there were no white settlers in the territory of Minas Gerais. By 1710, the population had reached 30,000, and by the end of the 18th century, it was 500,000. Gold rush. An estimated 1/3 of the 2 million slaves brought to Brazil in this 18th century were sent to the gold fields, where their lives were often worse than the people working in the sugar fields. And we've already discussed on the episode about Antigua how dangerous it was to work with sugar, because you had not just it wasn't just a case of watching some crops grow and then cutting them down. No. They burnt the sugar crops. They would then, you know, they would get the sugar. They would have to press it like in mangles, where you put the sugar in and then you turn the mangle, and people got, you know, caught up in the machinery and died. And then you have to boil it, and people got boiling bloody molasses all over them and died, and it was horrific. So the gold mining was even worse than that. Then God. I hate this bit of history, and but it's very important that we talk about it and teach it. Anyway, but by the middle of the 18th century, the gold mines were in decline. They got all the gold. Anyway, so we're going to fast forward a little bit to the Napoleonic Wars of the early 1800s, and basically running scared of Napoleon, whose army at that moment was advancing on Lisbon, the capital of Portugal. Some 15,000 court members. 15,000 members of the court. You think the royal family is bad? Jesus, woof. They fled. They fled from Portugal, away from Napoleon and his army, and they fled to Brazil, which is cool. And basically, the Prince Regent who led this expedition to this exile, this get the hell out of here, to Brazil, was a guy called Don Juan, or Don Jean, I guess. I'm going to call him Don Juan. Probably saying that completely wrong, but never mind. Dom Joan. Do I say Dom Joan? Let's say that until someone corrects me. Where are my specs? Says Sugar Free. They're in Vision Express. You know that they used to do it in 1 hour. Now they do it in 2 weeks. But there you go. Gaz says, my best mate is Brazilian Ivan Silva. He's lived in Liverpool for 20 years. Oh, brilliant. Emmanuel says, Brazil is racist as the F word. I've heard that, but so's the US and the UK. And that's not justifying it in any way, shape or form. It's just that racism is a disease of the mind that is prevalent all over the world, and it's disgusting, and it's got to stop. And we need to stop people coming out with bullshit like, oh, you can't talk about racism, that makes people racist. It doesn't. It makes people realize there's such a thing as racism and do something about it, because a lot of people want to be seen as good. They want to be seen as nice people. They don't want to be seen as horrible people. And if you explain to them that being racist is horrible, then they might stop being racist because they don't want to be seen as horrible. If you never bother to address the fact, you just don't talk about it, don't mention the war, then you're never going to heal any wounds, and you're never going to heal any of these diseased minds that think that racism is something good or noble or something worth propagating. Anyway, so moving swiftly on. So where was I? Yes, the royal family, led by Dom Joan, I'm going to call him Joan, ran over to what's now Brazil. And yes, they fell in love with the place. They fell in love with the place. That's what happened. They bloody fell in love with the place. And even after Napoleon's defeat in Waterloo in 1815, Don Joan showed no sign of abandoning Brazil. When his mother, Dona Maria I, died the following year, he became king and declared Rio the capital of the United Kingdom. Turns the page. Of Portugal and Brazil. So Rio de Janeiro became the capital of a major European country. And it's the only New World colony to ever have a European monarch ruling on its soil. And in 1822, legend has it that on the banks of the São Paulo's river, Brazil's then regent, Don John's son, Don Jones, I think it's pronounced Jones? Someone's going to correct me, I'm sure, at some point. His son Pedro, which I can pronounce, Pedro, that's pretty easy. He pulled out his sword, bellowing, "Independence or death!" With the same breath, he declared himself Emperor Dom Pedro I. So Dom Pedro I became the first emperor of an independent Brazil. And yes, the Brazilian people, however, were not quite as keen on Pedro as he was. Not as keen on him as he was about his new nation, his new empire. From all accounts, he was a blundering incompetent. Remind you of anyone? Bolsonaro. I'm supposed to put my hand over this. Remind you of anyone? Bolsonaro. That's better. Whose sexual exploits resulting in a string of children. It's a lot when you have a string. To all different women. Remind you of anyone? Boris Johnson. Horrified even the most permissive of Brazilians. After 9 years of womanizing, he was forced to abdicate, leaving his 5-year-old son, Dom Pedro II, to take over. A period of crisis followed, and the heir to the throne was, after all, just a child. He was only 15. He was even younger, I think. Between 1831 and 1840, Brazil was governed by so-called regencies, and there was lots of rebellions and trouble and turmoil and all that kind of stuff. Emmanuel says it's the institutional structure that within Brazil that's the problem, which leads few people of colour to being in positions of power. The majority of those seem to be Portuguese descendants. Yes, it's very true. And there are structural reasons for that, which I will mention actually when I get around to talking about when they actually bothered to abolish slavery, one of the last countries in the world to do so. Graham, the most funny word in Brazilian Portuguese is the car company Jeep. They pronounce hippie. They pronounce it hippie, like the community. Yeah, well, in France, they pronounce Wi-Fi. They pronounce it Wi-Fi. Which always makes me laugh. Anyway, so, so basically, there was a time of rebellion and stuff. The only solution, really, was to basically declare Dom Pedro II an adult, well before his 18th birthday. So, aged just 15, Dom Pedro II received the title Emperor and Perpetual Defender of Brazil. This is really cool. And he precipitated in one of the most prosperous spells in the country's history. Barring a couple of things, slavery still existed, and also there was a war with Paraguay in 1865. Now, this war involved Paraguay. Sorry, there was a war with Paraguay in 1865. For some reason, they decided to invade Brazil. Brazil teamed up with Argentina and Uruguay, and they thrashed the Paraguayans so hard that half the population of Paraguay was wiped out. Half the population of Paraguay. Its population was slashed to just 200,000, of whom 180,000 were women. So left with a country with just 20,000 men left in it after this war. It was absolutely brutal. And 100,000 Brazilians died as well, I think, in this particular war. Also, although slave trafficking was banned in Brazil in 1850, but it just continued. Another law passed in 1885. You're going to love this. It banned slaves over the age of 65. Oh, that's nice. So after a lifetime of servitude, you can enjoy your retirement of literally having nothing because you weren't getting paid for your work. So you can retire on your pension of absolutely nothing. Oh, also, small fact, the life expectancy of a Brazilian slave at the time was 45 years old. Well done, everyone. Anyway, 3 years later, people were kicking off. Come on, it had been 80 years at this point since the British had banned slavery. And I know it took a long time to get through the empire, but you know it eventually happened. The American Civil War was quite a distant memory. It's 20 years earlier. And Brazil still had slaves. And so in 1888, slaves were finally freed when slavery was officially banned on May the 13th, so 1888. There were 800,000 freed slaves who were largely illiterate and unskilled. Thousands were cast onto the streets without any kind of infrastructural support to support them. Many died. Many flooded into Brazil's urban centres, adding to the city's first slums. And still today, black people remain amongst the poorest and worst educated in the country. Princess Isabel gets the credit for freeing Brazilian blacks from the whips of the senzala, but left them stranded in the misery of the favela. For over 300 years, Brazilian society had been defined by the slave trade. Keen to cover their tracks, slave traders destroyed many documents relating to the line of work, but it is believed, as I said earlier, that over 4 million slaves was shipped from Africa to Brazil between 1550 and 1888, used as free labour for the sugar, gold, and later coffee plantations, or gold mining, sorry, not coffee, not a gold plantation, obviously, for 100 years after the illiterate were not allowed to vote. And who was illiterate? The slaves. So instantly, from the moment that they were allowed to take part in civil society, they were immediately disenfranchised by the fact that you had to be literate in order to vote. In fact, it wasn't until 100 years later, in 1988, that racism was actually made a crime in the Constitution. It was deemed unconstitutional to be racist. It took a bloody long time. And then a year later, in 1889, sorry, that's going back a century, but a year later, there was a military coup, and the monarchy got back healed, and a republic was born. They decapitated the old Brazilian empire. A military clique then ruled Brazil for the next 4 years until elections were held, but because of corruption and incompetence and ignorance and all those lovely things that we love in this country, only 2% of the population actually voted. And little change, except for the power of the military and the now influential coffee growers increased, while it diminished for the sugar barons. In the final decade of the 19th century, Brazil opened its borders, and millions of immigrants from Italy, Japan, as I said, Spain, Germany, Portugal, and elsewhere flooded into the country. The country became actually a haven for Jews fleeing from the Nazis in World War II. And then, ironically, after World War II, it became a haven for Nazis fleeing the Nuremberg trials at the end of World War II. But there you go. The Vargas era began in the 1930s. In 1930, he formed he formed the Liberal Alliance Party and decided to fight back after the defeat of their candidate in the presidential elections. Basically, this revolution kicked off on October the 3rd in 1930, and it spread rapidly through other states. It started in Rio Grande do Sul, which is the southernest state, the one that borders Uruguay and Argentina. And and it spread all across the country. And on November the 3rd, so a month later, Vargas became Brazil's new provisional president. He was the first president to wield absolute power, inspired by the fascist governments of Salazar in Portugal and Mussolini in Italy. Vargas banned political parties, imprisoned political opponents, and censored artists and the press. A bit like Putin in Russia right now. Despite this, many liked Vargas. They called him the father of the Brazilian workers. He introduced new labor laws and remained popular throughout his tenure. In 1937, he announced a new constitution. He called it the New State, and he passed minimum wage laws in 1938, expanding, but he also expanded the military and centralized power. In 1942, initially remaining neutral, Brazil then entered World War II on the side of the Allies, providing raw materials plus 25,000 troops, the only Latin American country to do so. In 1951, Vargas was elected president in an actual kind of free and fair election, but his new administration was plagued by the hallmark of, Brazilian governments, the C word. Corruption. Amid calls from the military for his resignation, Vargas responded in possibly the most dramatic way that you possibly could. In August the 24th, 1954, he penned a note saying, "I leave this life to enter into history," and shot himself through the heart. In 1956, JK de Oliveira is elected president, and he built a new capital, Brasilia, which I mentioned, and he had to borrow heavily for the project, leading to inflation that would dog the economy for decades. In 1964, there was a military coup overthrowing the left-leaning president, Juan Goulart, who was overthrown. And Goulart he wasn't a communist. He was just a bit left-leaning. And many Brazilians believed, and still believe to this day, that the overthrow was backed by the US government. So instead of just going, we don't know anything about this, plausible deniability, President Lyndon Johnson, he immediately cabled his warmest wishes to the new Brazilian administration. While this military junta was nowhere near as brutal as the ones suffered in Chile and Argentina, but for the best part of 20 years, freedom of speech was just an unknown concept, and political parties were banned. However, as often happens with these crank governments and dickheads who think they should be in power when obviously they don't really know what they're doing. The economy, right? It looked like it was booming. It looked like it was doing really well through the late 60s, early 70s. It grew. The economy grew by over 10%, and that's the sort of growth rate that gets UKippers and gammons and Tories and dickheads all excited, Brexiteers. All excited about 10% growth. However, they got that growth through borrowing massively from the international banks, and that money one day would have to be paid back. So they were saddling future generations with debt to make themselves look good at the time. Remind you of anyone? It should. It's all just a case of history repeating. During this time, Brazil's obsession with mega projects was born. They tried to make this Trans-Amazonia highway, which was thousands of miles long. There was the Rio Niterói bridge, and there was new universities and things that they just basically spent loads of money on, more than they should have done. They just like this idea of these mega projects. And by the late 70s, the economic boom was dying and opposition to the regime began to spread from the educated middle class to the working class, which always happens because while these cronies are in charge, while these cranks are in charge for a few years, the economy looks like it's doing all right. And then slowly the wheels fall off the train because they're just wasting money. They're corrupt. They're idiots. And eventually the people rise up. And this happens time and time again. It's all just a case of history repeating. There was a new workers' movement. And the guy at the helm of that was a guy called Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, whose name you will probably recognize because he went on to become president of Brazil. But we'll talk about him a little bit more later. He set up the Workers' Party, the PT, the Partido de Trabalhadores, which was Brazil's first ever mass political party. And it was there to speak for the poor. It grew out of these strikes in the 70s and the early 80s. In 1985, a presidential election took place, although voters were members of the only voters were the members of the National Congress. And unexpectedly, a guy called Tancredo Neves, opposing the military candidate, came out on top. And millions of Brazilians took to the streets to celebrate. And then he died before his inauguration. See what I mean about Brazil just being a bit unlucky. He died of heart failure. And his vice president was a guy called Sarney. Jose Sarney, as in like a sandwich. And Sarney, who had supported the military until 1984. He held office till 1989, a period in which runaway inflation helped Brazil rack up a gargantuan foreign debt on the money that the previous military junta had this money that they had loaned from other countries, this money that shouldn't have been loaned to despots and lunatics. You see, that's what bothers me about this. You know, these banks should not have been given money to gobshites. And it's one of the things that drives me mad that you have a situation in which someone has a house, say, they own that house, and then they borrow loads of money against the house, and they piss it all up on the wall on cocaine and hookers and gambling and gin and whatever rich people spend their money on, diamonds, I don't know. And then they burn the house down and they leave. And then the next person comes along and they spend years restoring this house back to its former glory, painting over the scorch marks, replacing all the wood, all that kind of stuff. And then one day a letter comes from the bank. You owe us 70 million trillion pounds. Oh, what? Why do I owe you that? Oh, because the previous occupants of the house, we lent them this money. Yeah, but you knew that he was a gambler and a drunk and a drug addict. Why did you lend him the money? And why should I have to pay for it? Just because I'm in the same house. I didn't lend that money. You didn't lend that money to me. And it's why all the bad debts in the world like this, the ones that are given to these horrible military regimes, why they should have been dropped straight away. I mean, there was obviously the Jubilee campaign in the early 2000s to drop the debt, culminating in the G7 summit in Edinburgh in 2005, when the world leaders decided to drop a lot of the debt, but not all of it. Not all of it. And there's still developing nations still paying off the crimes of some people who are dead, who are horrible in the past, 50, 60, 70 years ago. Still paying off today, which I find ridiculous. But, you know, I've got to get through this. I'm 13 minutes over and I've still got me holiday photos to show you. It's not a photo, it's a video. So moving swiftly on, where was I? So somehow hyperinflation. So from 1980 from 19 to 1994, Brazilians suffered from this devastating hyperinflation, which peaked at over 2,000% for several years. At this rate, your rent was doubling every 10 weeks. Food and clothes went up 40% a month, and credit cards charged 25% a month interest, not a year, a month interest. In 1989, they had the first direct presidential election. 100 years, pretty much to the day since the Republic was declared, in which only certain people were allowed to vote. Finally, people were allowed to vote. Black people were allowed to vote. Indigenous people were allowed to vote. Amazing. In 1989, the first ever direct presidential election, the first ever that could be called democratic, and there was a northeastern political climber by the name of Collor, who's victorious, Fernando Collor de Mello. And he revolutionized consumer laws. He added sell-by dates to things. Yay! But there was a list of scandals that he was involved with. And they alleged corruption on a vast scale, alleged drug deals, family feuds. It led to a congressional inquiry, and he was kicked out. He was impeached by the Supreme Court for passive corruption in 1994. Following his impeachment, the vice president, who was a guy called Franco, unfortunate name, I think, found himself in the hot seat. Despite his reputation as an eccentric, his administration was credited with competence and integrity, actually, which is funny because his name was Franco. Itamar Franco, his name was. Yes, his biggest achievement was to stabilize the economy, which he did by introducing a new currency called the real, and he pegged the real to the US dollar. Literally, there are so many currencies around the world that are either pegged to the euro or pegged to the dollar. I don't know if any are pegged to the British pound, but there you go. And it saw inflation plummet from a rate of over 5,000% in 1993 to just under 10% in 1994, which is quite incredible. Come the 2002 election, Lula, for the fourth time of asking, finally won. He toned down his socialistic rhetoric and promised to repay Brazil's international debt, which I don't think they should have to repay, but, whatever. This propelled Lula to a convincing win. For the first time ever, Brazil had a government on the left of the political spectrum. I mean, to be fair, it only had democratic elections for about 13 years by then. Also a president who really knew what poverty was like. He was one of 22 children. 22 children! Jesus. Basically, he had worked as a shoeshine boy, then a mechanic, then trade union leader. And he was missing a finger. He still is. He's still alive. Why am I talking about him in the past tense? Anyway, he got the economy under control and he helped lift millions out of poverty. And he was rated Brazil's most popular president in history. In his final months in office, his approval rating was over 80%. And then he was taken over by Dilma Rousseff. And she was elected Brazil's first ever female president in 2010. And she was a former Marxist guerrilla. Yeah, guerrilla fighter. Between 1970 and 1972, she was imprisoned and tortured for the best part of 3 years. Dilma came down hard on corruption, at least initially. Her second term, however, exploded when the Petrobras scandal happened, which was involving the biggest oil company in Brazil, one of the biggest oil companies in the world, to be honest with you, and a lot of corruption in the government. And that basically brought her down. A lot of members of her party were linked to this corruption scandal. But I don't think there was anything linking her directly to the scandal. But obviously, you're measured by your quality of the people you hang out with, I guess. Also, at the time in 2014, Dilma's popularity was plummeting, partly because of the money that was being spent on both the World Cup that Brazil was due to host, or Rio was due to, Brazil was due to host in 2014, and the Olympics, which Rio was due to host in 2016. The economy had stalled, the GDP growth had gone down to just 2%, and it was started outright shrinking in 2015, raising fears of a recession. So this Petrobras scandal was the largest corruption scandal in Brazil's history. And several high-ranking politicians and oil company executives were linked to a $4 billion scheme that shook the country to its core. In the run-up to the Summer Olympics, Rio spent $37 billion on a track and trace system that didn't work. Oh, no, I'm joking. No, it was stadiums, infrastructure, and civic beautification, adding a new metro line, downtown light rail, and new museums. In fact, if you go to Brazil now, if you go to Rio now, some of the areas are pretty much unrecognizable. There are a lot of concrete overpasses that have been taken away and replaced with tunnels, which I love. I like that. I like the fact that that's happened. I like the fact that money's been invested in doing those infrastructure works, but at the same time, obviously, there's a lot of poverty in Brazil which needs to be addressed. So it's having a balance of not of doing these infrastructure projects, but not letting people feel like they've been left behind. And unfortunately, for Dilma, she kind of let people feel like they were being left behind, I suppose. Anyway, and on the 31st of August 2016, that awesome year, Dilma was they had a vote in the Senate, 61-20 to impeach her, and they found her guilty of breaking budgetary laws and removed her from office. A guy from Lebanon called Michael Temer, he took over for a couple of years just as an interim president because he was the vice president. He wasn't the same party as Dilma. He was a different party. It was a centralist PMDB party, I think. And he didn't stand in 2018, which left the door open to an absolute terrible person, trying very hard not to swear, called Jair Bolsonaro. Let's just go back to Lula for a second. Lula was arrested in April 2018 and spent 580 days in jail. He attempted to run in the 2018 presidential election, but was disqualified under Brazil's what's called the Clean Slate Law. In November 2019, the Supreme Federal Court ruled that incarcerations with impending appeals were unlawful, and Lula was released from prison as a result. In March 2021, the Supreme Court Justice Edson Fashion ruled that all of Lula's convictions must be nullified because Lula was tried by a court that did not have proper jurisdiction over his case. Fashion's ruling, which was confirmed by other Supreme Justices just a couple of months ago in April 2021, restored Lula's political rights. He should be able to run again for president in the future, and he might do in the next election. But let's just talk about Bolsonaro then, the tropical Trump, as they call him. Jar Jar Bolsonaro. I like that, Lee. I like what you've done there. You're here now, though, Duke Vengeance, and I thank F for that. Now we can set off the fireworks. Woohoo! Yes, indeed. Lots of money because Brazilians loved her. Francisco, imagine a money where politicians resign after corruption scandal. Wonder what that's like. Well, to be fair, some of them resigned. At least one of them shot himself, and then another couple were taken out by courts. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, really. Bit of a mixed bag. But at least the courts have the power to do that. Anyway, so yes, tropical Trump. Notorious for his bellicose, bile-filled rhetoric and contempt for human rights, Bolsonaro has long been a hate figure for Brazil's left and right and up, down, left. Everyone. No, well, not the right, but yeah, Brazil's left. Okay, so the four of the most horrific things he said. He once told a lawmaker that he opposed that she didn't, she wasn't worth raping. That's what he said. It's the leader of a country, a very large country. He said that a woman wasn't worth raping. He said he would rather die than see his sons come out as gay. I really hope that one of his sons comes out as gay. He commented after visiting one black community that they do nothing. They're so useless, I doubt they can procreate. This is a man who says you couldn't talk about racism because it makes people racist, said the racist. Finally, he's vowed not to let conservation programs interfere with the agro industry, effectively greenlighting the destruction of the Amazon rainforest. And the environmental group Amazon Watch warned that his victory spelled disaster for the region. That was back in 2018. And yes, it already has, which I'll come on to in a moment. In the first 6 months of his tenure, his approval ratings plunged from his initial inauguration of 32% compared to 11% when he took power. 32% of Brazilians thinking that his government was bad or awful compared with 11% when he took power. And then let's talk about his response to COVID-19, because it's been absolutely shite. It's been almost as bad as we have had in the UK, or they had in the US under Trump, or what they've had in Belarus under Lukashenko. First of all, he dismissed the threat of COVID-19, calling it a little flu. A little flu. It's killed 500,000 people. 500,000 people in his country alone. Bolsonaro used his constitutional powers to interfere with the health ministry's administrative matters, such as clinical protocols, data disclosure, and vaccine procurement. He vetoed legislation that would have both mandated the use of masks at religious sites and compensated health professionals permanently harmed by the pandemic, for example. He obstructed state government efforts to promote social distancing and uses decree power to allow many businesses to remain open as essential, even though they weren't. It included places like spas and gyms. Bolsonaro also aggressively promoted unproven medicines, most notably hydrochloroquine, to treat COVID-19 patients. Tropical Trump. Bolsonaro used his public profile as president to shape the debate around the coronavirus crisis, fostering a false dilemma between economic catastrophe and social distancing, and misrepresenting science. He has blamed Brazilian state governments, China, and the World Health Organization for the COVID-19 crisis, and has never taken responsibility for managing his own country's outbreak. Tropical Trump. In December, Bolsonaro declared that he would not take the vaccine because of the side effects. If you turn into a crocodile, it's your problem, he said. Yes, he thinks that the vaccine for the most deadly pandemic the world has seen in over 100 years will turn people into crocodiles. He's not all there. Bolsonaro's pandemic mismanagement has created conflict within his government. Brazil cycled through 4 health ministers in less than a year. Brazil's uncontrolled outbreak gave rise to several new coronavirus variants, including the P1 variant, which appears more contagious. And Brazil's COVID-19 transmission rate is finally starting to drop, but the situation is worrisome still. Tens of thousands of Brazilians marched to demand Bolsonaro's impeachment. Protests over 200 cities, this was 2 weeks ago. 200 cities in Brazil, sparked by the president's handling of the COVID pandemic, and those protests are still going on today, bringing you very close to literally, you know, what's going on right now. Contemporary stuff, history, ancient history to the modern day, literally today. And yeah, the exact number that I checked before I came online, it was 494,000 people dead, Brazilians dead of COVID-19 under Bolsonaro's watch. The worst possible leader to be in charge at the worst possible time. Martin says, bye-bye Brazilian Amazon. Hello, desert wasteland. Yes, savanna. The savanna vacation of the Brazilian rainforest is deeply, deeply unsettling, because what it does is it turns a carbon sink into an area that actually causes more carbon to be leached out into the environment. Let's talk about the Amazon for a moment. The Amazon was home to 1,000 different tribes when the Portuguese first came along. 5 centuries later, there were an estimated 700,000 indigenous people left, living in little over 200 tribes. So it's 1/5 of the original tribal number. Slavery, diseases, armed conflict, and loss of territory all took their savage toll on Brazil's native peoples, to the point where in the 1980s, Indio numbers were under 300,000, and it was feared that they might die out completely. Just over 1 million square kilometers, more than 12% of the entire country, is now either officially or registered as indigenous land, or in the process of registration. It's thought there's about 60 uncontacted tribes in the Amazon who have been left to do their own thing, mostly small groups living in the forests. Under Bolsonaro, the Amazon deforestation has surged to a 12-year high. The program that had been brought in under previous administrations to ensure that less of the Amazon virgin rainforest was being cut down, and the rainforest that had already been cut down was used more effectively, has now been backheeled, and an area 7 times greater, 7 times larger than Greater London has been lost since Bolsonaro took power. He was blamed for the wildfires in 2019, which he did very little to combat. In January 2021, this year, it was reported that Bolsonaro could face charges in the International Criminal Court after being accused of crimes against humanity. Indigenous leaders in Brazil and human rights groups are urging the court to investigate the Brazilian president over his dismantling of environmental policies and violations of indigenous rights, which they say amounts to ecocide. Scientists have warned that Bolsonaro's destructive policies could push the Amazon rainforest into an irreversible tipping point, turning swathes of the tropical forest into savanna, which would make it impossible to control climate change. If you really want to watch a really good documentary, there is a new David Attenborough narrated documentary that dropped on Netflix last week, and it's really worth watching. It's about tipping points. It's called Life in the Balance, I think. Well worth checking out. It's very sad as well, but they talk about the situation, that the fact that this tropical rainforest is turning into savanna at a frightening rate, and once it becomes savanna, there's no going back. Okay, so are the crocodiles magnetic? I don't know. My mum is from Galicia and my father is from Azores. I have Celt background. Woo! That's pretty cool. Crocodile. Everyone knows Vax turns you into a talking paperclip, obsessed with writing letters. Indeed. Martin says, bye-bye Peruvian Amazon. Hello environmental despoilation. Bye-bye Indigenous Americans. Hello European and US and Mezzo profits plus more shanty towns. Indeed. Okay, so we're going to go to a little bit of footage now that I got while I was there in 2002. I've edited it together and it's really nice. There's only one problem. In my stupidity at the time, because I was young and I didn't know what YouTube was. YouTube was young as well, to be fair. I didn't realize how bad it was to put other people's music on your videos. So me, being an idiot, put loads of music. I put loads of music on my videos. So I'm gonna have to mute most of this. I'm really sorry about that. I'll try and get a little bit of the sound in. But then I'll appear in the bottom corner at some point and try and continue this conversation with you. But in the meantime, I'll try and make it so that I don't... Because the thing is, if I play any copyrighted music, YouTube will cut me off after a few seconds. So I've got to be really, really careful. But you can probably guess what music I used as we go. I'm sure you can probably guess. So here we go. Let's screencast. And bring it over. Ooh, it's gone all dark. And let's press play. Let's go.
Right, well, I don't know if the riot took place, but we went to bed anyway, so not to know. Doing our graduate impressions at the back of the bus. We're in the Iguazu Falls. Is it Iguazu? Iguazu Falls, which we're going to see in a minute. Calm, trying to be a bigger. Go ahead. Looks like supposed to be cats. Oh my god.
Okay, sorry, I've got to cut the sound off there because I started playing the music from the mission. And although Ennio Morricone, rest in peace, man, I don't want Ennio Morricone's publishing company suing me for nicking their tunes, nicking their tunes. So, I'm just going to bring myself back onto the screen, I think, if I can, so I can describe this to you, and you can see me do that. But yeah, this is the Iguazu Falls, which are on the border of Argentina and Brazil, the very southern tip. Well, it's not the southern tip of Brazil. Brazil goes a little bit lower than this, but yes, it's quite an impressive place to visit. I spent 2 days there actually. I spent a day on the Argentinian side of the falls, and then I spent a day on the Brazilian side of the falls. But as you can see, I've been to Niagara. I haven't been to Victoria, but I've been to Iguazu, and I would say for my money, this is the most magnificent waterfall in the world. It is just vast. It's just absolutely huge. It takes up the entire horizon. It's not just like a couple of cascades. It is absolutely monumental. And I was there in 2002, so this must be about June 2002. I think I was there. I'm sorry about the quality of the picture; it's not great. That's actually me on an island in the middle of the water. I think I was on an island, and my camera was getting absolutely covered, as you can see, with the mist. There's a sign there saying, "Caution, do not pass." Beautiful rainbow. See, even the Gathru Falls supports pride, which is nice. Okay, and there we go. So that was the Gathru Falls. I'm just gonna.
It's a comedy situation. We just had to wait an hour for the bus to turn up, and it's turned up, and it went about 2 yards down the road. It broke down. Now we're stuck here. Not very happy. You happy, Flo? No. And I didn't bring a coat, and I'm hungry. I need to go to the toilet.
Wine.
We could be waiting here for some time. We're now 23 hours away from the World Cup final, and we're off to Rio to watch it on a big screen in the middle of the town, city, place, whatever. The border crossing now at Brazil. The bus has gone without us.
The border crossing.
I seem to spend half my life at border bleeding crossings. I'm on the bus now.
We'll skip a few bits here. So get to
the radio.
Turn the sound off, quick. Let me know if I've been cut off. Okay. So this is when Brazil won the World Cup. So this is my footage from it. It was absolutely insane. You can tell I've had to bunk up the levels on this a bit because it was a bit dark. And obviously this is a 2002 burly digital camcorder I'm recording this on, but this is everyone jumping around and dancing and having a bloody good time. Because Brazil's won the World Cup for the 5th time and they haven't won it since. So it's been nearly 20 years. 20 years since Brazil's won the World Cup, but there you go. So that's everyone having a really good time there. This was before even thinking about getting beaten by Germany 7-1 was a thing that could possibly ever happen. Copyright strike on genetic techno beats. I got it was Basement Jaxx. I think it was Basement Jaxx. So no, I will get done for that. Turn it off as quickly as possible. So by this point, I'm a bit drunk. What can I say? This car's been painted. I mean, I don't know they did it like on the day or whatever, but that's like 5 stars there. And we were waiting. I think this is a couple of days after the actual. I think this is a couple of days after the actual. What's it called? They won. I think they won on the Sunday, and then it was like the Tuesday, and we were waiting for them to come to Copacabana Beach. And they never actually made it to Copacabana Beach. They got through a tunnel and they had to go like turn around. So like thousands of people waiting to cheer the team on the top of this open deck bus that were gonna, open top bus. Sorry, that were coming to go, and we were all gonna dance and party. And we just had the party in the streets, and the team never turned up because I think they got a bit swamped. People were a bit annoyed, I think, because I think the president at the time wanted them to go to Brasilia first. And everyone was like, why are you going to Brasilia? There's no one there. Come to Rio. Anyway, so yeah, moving on. Let's see what happens now.
Well, one of the main streets anyway. We're going to go and climb Christ now. I thought that'd be a bit of a laugh. We're going to bungee jump off his right hand, aren't we? What? We're going to bungee jump off his right hand.
Okay, so... there you go. Unfortunately, I'm playing the Pixies at this point. It's Jesus! Look, it's Jesus Christ! It's Jesus. And then I think I make some off-colour jokes about Jesus biting his nails. Yeah, that sounds like something I'll do. Sorry, I'm a terrible person. But nice hat. It's when I had hair. Oh, them were the days. And that was me doing Jesus in a microwave. Okay, so that's Jesus there. Where are we going next? I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it for Brazil. I don't know what's coming next. I seem to be on a bus, so I'm presuming I'm going to Paraguay or something. There you go. I'm in Paraguay. Okay, well I'll just stop that there. You can watch the Paraguay bit when I do the Paraguay when I do the actual Paraguay show. Just 1 second while I make myself full screen again, full screen ahead, as they say. Let's have a look. 1 second. Sorry. I have frozen on the screen. I will come back momentarily. Oh no, it's done that thing it sometimes does where it doesn't pick up my camera sometimes. So I've got to fiddle around with things. Okay, right. I am coming back to you in 5, 4, 3, 1. Right, there you go. Hello again. So I hope you liked that little bit of footage there. So I showed you the Guthrie Falls, showed you Rio having a party, and went up to see Jesus Christ and made some terrible jokes. I hope I didn't offend anyone. I did that once. I think it was on the same trip. I was in Bolivia. I went to the island of the sun, the Ile de Sol, in the middle of Lake Titicaca, and I was chatting to these two young, well, I was only 22 or 21 at the time. So, these two women who were about the same age as me. And they said, what things, what are you doing? I said, well, I used to give hand jobs for crack around the back of the courthouse in Liverpool. And then I kicked the crack habit, and I had all this money left over. So I thought, well, why not go traveling? And they went, oh, okay, yeah. I said, so what do you do? And they said, we're trainee nuns. I was like, that was a joke. There was a joke. Yeah, terrible. Anyway, my mum says good night. Good night, mum. Hopefully she's already left. Andy says, yeah, it's class. Where the town exists right there. People are relying on tourists. Must be desperate these days. Yuri Kaluda, thanks, Graham. I've been listening to your synopsis of Brazilian history. Very interesting. I have several friends from Brazil, but know little about the history. It's an interesting place. It's a great place. I like it when I was there. I've been there twice in my life, and both times the people have been really lovely. The food's been great. I've just had a really good time. I've not had the problems that other backpackers have run into. I'm obviously not run into any kind of crime or anything like that. So I've just been lucky, I guess. But I'd really recommend it. But I would recommend also maybe to wait until Bolsonaro is not president anymore, because I think this summer's going to be, it'll be winter down there. But yeah, the next couple of months are going to be very interesting in Brazil. And I hope that Bolsonaro gets what's coming to him. There you go. Hey, so... he was marble statue good looking, indeed. Kind of Christ the Redeemer, which is not on the top of Sugarloaf Mountain. Just to make that clear, that's Sugarloaf Mountain there. Jesus isn't on the top of that. He's on top of another mountain over the way. Okay, so I think we can wrap it up. Can we wrap it up there? I think we can. Anyone want to go over to the Discord chat? Do you want to go over to the Discord chat and have a quick chat? Anyone want to go over there? Do you? Let me know in the chat if you do, and I will set up the link for you so we can all head over to the Discord chat to continue talking. Let me just do this. Oh, seamless, absolutely seamless. I still maintain that I have better production values than GB News. I'm sorry, but if I had a producer, if I had one person just doing the vision mixing and stuff, I could be running with this. Lee Korn says yes. Okay, Lee, you're gonna get what's coming to you, which is a link to the actual general chat of the Discord server. This link will self-destruct after 6 hours. If you're not been on the Discord server before, it is a bit like an old school bulletin board, but with Zoom functionality, so you can actually have videos up and do video chat and stuff if you wish. And I'll see you there in a few minutes. I think I'll go and get a cup of tea. Thank you very much for watching. Andy McAvoy, I could have died in Igothu. Is that because you were nailed to a cross and they pushed you over the top of it? I'd love to go to Discord, but I'm just too daft to get it working. Oh my God, no! Just download it. I think. I don't know. I didn't really get it for a long time. Andy McAvoy, I met a guy in Igothu who hadn't eaten in a day. Obviously sorted that. Let's go to Discord. Okay. Not staying up till 3:30 this time, though. No, indeed. Priti Patel in a miniskirt. No. I don't want to think about the gremlin woman. Let's try and keep these conversations on topic. So, I will return next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, to talk to you, my lovely crew, about the country of Brunei on the island of Borneo in Southeast Asia. So if you fancy learning a little bit about the country of Brunei, which I think only became independent in 1981, so I don't know how much of the history I'm going to be able to tell you, but it should be quite interesting. I can't make Discord work on my computer. This isn't a complaint. I really love these YouTube chats. Damn it. I don't know why you can't get... I don't know enough about it. We need Glasgow Kiss on here to explain things to us, because I was introduced to Discord earlier this year by Maximilian Robespierre. I'd never even heard of it before. I've been introduced to a lot of things this year. Some better than others. So, yes, thanks for watching. It's been great, and thank you for the super chats. Really, really appreciate them. If you would like to keep these chats going for the rest of the year, I mean, I've got another 3.5 years worth of material here. Please consider heading over to Patreon and becoming a Patreon of me. You can patronize me as much as you like. Go to patreon.com/thatgingerscouser. Otherwise, you can just join my channel on YouTube for £4 a month, which is the cost of an expensive cup of coffee. Maybe a cup of coffee with a bit of a caramel shot in there and some frothy milk and maybe some whipped cream in the top. I don't know. But if you would do that, I would really, really, really appreciate it. So, thank you for watching. I'll be back next week with Brunei. And also, I'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock for the last Hughes round of the week, where we'll be rounding up the week's affairs in the world. So, thank you very much. Andy McAvoy says, "You are so old, Graham." Thank you, Andy. Don't know quite what to do with that. Anyway, so and I think it looks like Darian has interesting stories to tell us about Brunei. So let's save that anecdote for next week, please, Darian. That'd be great. And yes, until we meet again, I will say fair winds and following seas, traveller.